Ladies and gentlemen, what the fuck is going on? It's Jason back for another show, number 9, Bitch Faggot Radio. We're here. Welcome. Or goodbye if you suddenly don't like what you're hearing. Good riddance. Go fuck yourself. Go away. Beat it. Scram. Adios. Just fucking beat it. Alright? Anyways, show number 9. Number 8, we talked about fairness and survival and life. I imagine we're going to continue that conversation in some capacity or another. Hopefully, it's not just the same shit. But, before we begin, as usual, if you'd like to find my Amazon Author Central page, you can do so in the description below in the YouTube video, where the YouTube channel itself is. Sorry, there's a fucking mosquito in here all of a sudden. Bastard, I'm gonna get you. That mosquito just done fucked it right up. But, I can't blame the mosquito, can I? The mosquito's only a function of our world. It's really me that's got to be more resilient to the world. Isn't that right? Letting some pussy mosquito fuck up this show. What the fuck? Anyways. So yeah, you can find me on my Amazon Author Central, where you can find a link to my blog. You can buy shit. And, if you end up Googling my name, Jason Van Jason, you may come across some other individuals with the name Jason Van something. Whatever their name may be. You just let all those folk know. Those nice, kind folk. They should die. Not by my hand or any of yours, but just an expedient death will be all that's required of them. Alright. The reason we wish those folk expedient deaths is because they have soiled the name Jason Van with their fucking nonsense. And that is no more. No more will the name Jason Van be soiled by fucking nonsense. No more. There's some fucking guy watching me on a bridge. I don't know why the fuck he's watching me, but it's a little bit creepy. This isn't exactly the best area of town I'm in. Actually beside the LRT, you might hear it swinging by here. Anyways, getting back on track. You can find me on Twitter at Jason Van Jason. If you have any direct questions for the show that you would like answered on said show, that being this one, you may address those questions to jvjradio at protonmail.com. And that address is also in the description below, as well as links to my Twitter. So now that you've listened to me ramble about fucking selfish nonsense, just want to ask you, how's your day going? Has anyone asked you how's your day going? Has anyone just been like, hey man, how's your day going? And you know what's really funny is that even though I can't hear your response, that's really no different than the person asking, isn't it? When someone says, "Hey, how are you?" They're just kind of asking, or most people are. Some people actually care. Some people will respond to what you say, but most of the time it's just, some empty fucking question. Oh, I'm really good. Yeah, I'm doing this and that, and whatever. So, how are you? It's no different. It might be a little bit different, okay? It might be a little bit different. But it's only different because those people can get something out of you, and they know it. That's why they're being nice to you. Because you know what? Let me tell you something. Some fucking bum walks up to you and says, "Hey, how are you?" And you'll be like, fucking pretty good, bud. Just keep walking, right? Isn't that true, though? Anytime we engage in a conversation, we're hoping that conversation is going to be of some social consequence to an extent. Especially if you're a woman. Because if you're a man, if you're engaging a woman in conversation, the potential for that to turn into something is really dependent upon you. But as a woman, it's not really dependent upon her. It's dependent upon, the man and what the man has to offer. Because after a certain extent, the woman's just got to offer herself, right? If you're some fucking baller, doing baller shit, got money, wheels, dick, let's go. Money, wheels, dick, I got it all, let's go. The woman ain't gonna fight it. Not very hard anyways. Or if she does, I guess she's got some self-respect, or maybe she's fucking stupid if she's ugly, I don't know. But, for the man, he's got to really offer that. And not just the man, but men in general. Even when speaking to another man, there has to be some kind of social consequence attached to the conversation. And if there's not, who knows what kind of response you're going to get. You're really leaving yourself open there. Some guy might just tell you to fucking beat it. Hey, how's it going? Beat it. And then the ball's in your court to react now. Right? To react. Not react. To react. React. The ball's in your court to react when someone addresses you in that manner. And for a lot of people, reacting to that is nature. That is something they've always done. But for others, they find themselves in a weird spot. And confrontation begins to ensue, especially with two men, where you have two testosterone-filled men, and especially if there's a woman in between those two men, and one of those men thinks that by putting this dude in his place, I'm going to prove a point to her, right? Competition, right? And so that confrontation begins, and what you have to understand, number one, about confrontation is that confrontation is rarely about the issues at hand. Very seldom am I going to have a confrontation about the actual issue I'm having a confrontation about. And if I am having some kind of issue about that issue at hand, I'm probably going to be able to solve it before that confrontation really goes anywhere. The confrontations that do go places are usually the ones where there's no real answer to the confrontation because there's no real question. And when you don't have a question and you're looking for an answer, who the fuck knows what you're going to find? And that's what a lot of confrontation between people is they're looking for an answer when they don't even know the question. They're so far ahead of themselves, they're looking for an answer when they don't even have the question as to why. Exactly. What type of question is being asked? They don't care. They're just looking for the answer. And if the answer is, I'm going to punch this guy in the head, then I guess the question isn't really up for debate, is it? And people, all too often when we engage people in a conversation or even a debate, they have an answer in their heads before they've even told us they do. They've made up their minds before we even get a chance to sway them. And so changing the mind, not just giving someone your opinion, but trying to change their mind, especially when they know you're trying to change their mind, that becomes difficult. And in all faculties of conversation, to an extent, conflict arises. And confrontations arise. Often a conversation you engage in to some extent is going to be confrontational. And not in ways that you'd assume. but in ways that are unassuming. Things we say that we assume are harmless suddenly take on a very negative tone. We make a food joke about Sally's weight, and all of a sudden Sally's boyfriend wants to punch us in the head. Or, what's another good one? I can't really think of, there's that cunt mosquito. Gotcha, you cocksucker. Eat it. Eat life, bitch. But, at all times, we're faced with confrontation when we talk with people. As we talked about previously, our human beingness is very confrontational in nature. It's very competitive in nature. We want to prove that we're better than the person beside us. And why? That's not usually asked. If you see two dudes, I guess, vying for a woman's attention, at no point does the woman sit there and wonder, why are these two guys vying for my attention? She knows why. And they know why, and all of us know why, but we want to pretend like we don't. We want to pretend like there's another issue going on. We want to, hey, you two, break it up. What's going on here? All of a sudden someone walks in with some authority and says, what's the issue? Without realizing that the issue is that these two people are human beings, and that's really the issue. And how are you going to solve two people being human beings? You're going to let them be human beings and solve it. And you know what? It might not turn out the best for one of those individuals, but for the majority of us, I think it's going to be okay. And I think ultimately when we engage in confrontation, we have to understand that if we're engaging in confrontation, we should try and figure out what led to it before we fully engage in it. And when we look at what leads up to a confrontation, to any conflict at all, we usually see that it's not what we expect. Sometimes it's just a look. Somebody can give, another individual a look and it just sets them off. Hey, why are you looking at me that way? And the guy says, well, because I can look at you any way I want. And here we go. Then the guy responds back, and pretty soon we're looking for Einstein in the group, right? We're looking for the guy who's got the best comebacks, and then when the comebacks are done and the fists start flying, we wonder, wow, that escalated fast, or we wonder, how did that happen, or all sorts of things ensue. But often that question is left unasked. And it's left unasked because we have the answer. We know we have the answer, but we forget that even though we have an answer, there's still power in asking the question. Even though we have the answer, that doesn't mean that the question doesn't carry any weight in itself. All too often, when we talk about a question, we are so wrapped up in the answer that we forget about the power of the question itself. We forget that an answer doesn't just give a question power. Our intuitiveness and our ability to think about shit in a very logical way and in a very illogical way at times fuels the power of the question. A lot of the time, we're asking questions that we already know the answers to, and that's not a bad thing. Anytime I ask someone a question, if I can't intelligently gauge their response to it, to be honest, I'm probably not going to ask it. Especially if I'm dealing with one of my clients, and something of a questionable nature happens. If I don't already know the answer to that question, or have an idea of what that answer is, the chance of me asking that question is very slim. And that's because I understand to an extent the power of the question. And the question is not defined by the answer. That's number one. The question is absolutely not defined by the answer, although the majority of us want to believe that. We want to believe that the only reason we ask the question is for the answer. But why are we asking a question when we already have the answer? That's a very strange concept, but maybe it's because we don't have the answer. We think we have the answer, and we're just going to ask it just to make sure, to second guess ourselves, to say, okay. But maybe we're asking the question because we have other questions, and we want to see what answer is given. We want to see if going back to the two dudes having a confrontation over the woman, we want to see if, the answer is, oh, because you looked at me funny, or if the guy will actually say, because I want to fuck her and I want to prove a point. My point is I'm tougher than this guy, And so, he's trying to prove himself in a way, right? And we want to ask him, okay, well, to his answer, we want to follow up with another question, and we want to keep questioning, and we want to keep providing some sort of insight into the confrontation or the conflict that maybe that person doesn't have, or maybe that person has but is just choosing not to recognize. That's another thing, is this omissions of truth. That's another really good reason to ask a question, especially of a woman. Are you listening, men? Especially of a woman. Let me tell you what an omission of truth is. For example, what's a fantastic... I have so many great examples of omissions of truth. I'm just trying to think of the very best one for the beginner thinkers who maybe can't quite wrap their brain around this concept at first. I was dating a woman one time, and she had every symptom. Okay, first of all, this chick had 2 kids. Red flag right there, I know. Men don't date chicks with kids, period. And I'm saying that, obviously there's chicks out there that you can date with kids, but the majority of women that have kids, you shouldn't date as a man, and I'll explain that later on in the show here. But to get back on track, omissions of truth. I was dating this woman. She had 2 kids. She expressed to me that she wanted a third. So I was like, okay, I can manage that, and so I can make that happen. I told her, and so. Couple weeks go by, and she begins to have all the symptoms of being pregnant, including morning sickness. You just go down the list, and she had every single one. And I asked her multiple times, "Are you pregnant? Are you pregnant? Are you pregnant? No. Are you seeing anybody else? No." And I was gauging her reactions, and her reactions were not honest. And so I knew that something was going on, but I also knew that she wasn't going to tell me until she wanted to tell me, right? So eventually it comes out that, oh, I'm pregnant. And I'm kind of choked a little bit, and I'm like, well, who got you pregnant? It's like, oh, a month before I met you, I slept with my ex. And I looked at her and said, well, I asked you if you were sleeping with anybody. And you said no. She said, well, that doesn't really count because it's a month before. And I said, who are you to say that doesn't count? And yada, yada. And so we get into this. And basically, the point that I'm getting to is that I did ask her if she was sleeping with anyone. And she replied no. And she was being honest. But what she could have said was, a month ago I slept with my ex and we had unprotected sex. But because she didn't, even though I asked the context of the question, which is, are you sleeping with anyone? What she did was she didn't tell the truth. She omitted the truth. She chose not to tell me because technically I didn't ask. Do you see that? She could have chose to tell me, but she chose not to, even though I was very close to asking that question. But she chose not to tell me. She chose to omit the truth. Now, an omission of truth and a lie are essentially the same thing, to me. To you, it might be differently. And you know, to be honest, a lot of us omit a lot of truths. A lot of truth is omitted. But when we have a truth that directly impacts us, I'd prefer if it wasn't omitted. And I told her that, and she didn't really see it that way. And immediately, because she didn't see it that way, I knew that this was one of her bigger tools that she uses to manipulate people. Was the omission of truth. And so that's why I associate the omission of truth with a lie. Is not because she's actually lying, but because she has an intent of not revealing the truth, which has the same intent as a lie. And so we're not looking at the consequence of the action, we're looking at what's inspiring the action. So a lie and an omission of truth are the same thing because they're defined by the intent of the action, the intent being to deceive, to not give the truth, right? To essentially lie. And even though it's not technically a lie, the act of just the intent itself and the intent that act carries is enough for me to say that's basically a lie, right? So an omission of truth when it comes to questions is a big reason why we ask questions to answers that we already know. Because in truth, those answers might not be true. And in most cases, if we're asking a question a second time of somebody, even if it's subconsciously, it's because we know that answer is bullshit. And our bodies are very good at recognizing stress in people. We naturally do it. We naturally see people get nervous. We naturally see people experience every emotion that we do. Some on different levels, obviously. Some have, bipolar and experience emotions at a frantic rate and dropping and elevating. But the fact remains that we can visually recognize these signs naturally. And obviously the trained individual is going to be able to recognize those signs immediately. Whereas us, we're not trained, right? We're not, we're naturally trained, but we're not deliberately trained, right? So, all the same though, we know, well, we don't know, but we have an inclination of when an omission of truth is going on. I don't directly address lies because lies are very hard to get through. And the ability to get through a lie does not depend upon who's telling it, but the intent of telling the lie. If the intent of me telling a lie is for you to not discover that I fucked your wife, I'm probably not going to tell you, regardless of how many fucking questions you ask me. And if the intent of the lie is for me to sound cool and you question on me for 20 hours, then I might just crack and say, you know what, it was a lie. If the question the lie. If the lie is being told for any number of reasons, we always have to take into account the intent behind the lie, but also the person telling it to a small extent. There are people that realize that once they've been caught in a lie, the chance of them being caught in a lie again is extremely high. There's a lot of people who realize that. There's a lot of people who realize that when they tell a lie, they're putting their credibility on the line. and they get a turn on through that. I guess we'll talk about my dating life again. One of my exes was a kleptomaniac. She liked to steal. And my immediately your response will be, well, what did she like to steal? As if she needed something and had no other way to get it but to steal it. No. No. This lady would just steal for the hell of it. She would just steal because she could. No other reason why. Just there was a certain thrill that she got from stealing that she didn't get from anything else. And she loved that thrill. And so she also got a thrill out of living risky lifestyles. She would meet guys at a Tim Hortons and take her in her truck and fuck them the first time she ever met them. She was a crazy sex addict. And being a kleptomaniac, it was evident of where the source of this behavior was coming from, was this deep desire for her to do wrong things that she knew were wrong without getting caught, because there was a rush attached to them. There was a rush of having sex in public. There was a rush of there was a rush of stealing. There was a rush of cheating. There was a rush of having a man in the house, being me, that she would cheat on all the time, but I couldn't find out, right? She was playing doubles with me, you know. Playing doubles with a lot of different men, but I say doubles meaning, you know, living a double life. And this lady was even a drug addict, and I didn't even know. I lived in her house for a year, had no idea, till she told me one day. And she just, for whatever reason, maybe she wanted to see the look on my face, I don't know, but she told me. Not about everything else. I found everything else out myself, but one of the things I noticed was that when she went to go do her paperwork at Tim Hortons, which would be the time when she would take men home, or take men in her truck and fuck them and stuff, one of the things I noticed was that when I talked to her about that time, her body language began to freeze up. And she began to participate in an action known as masking. And we didn't talk about this when we talked about body language, but masking is, I don't want to say an advanced technique of body language. It's actually very, more of an awareness of body language. But masking is essentially when I place my hands flat on the table, take a deep breath, and then I begin answering your questions. And the reason I'm doing this is so that I can force my body to stay still so that I don't have any reactions, body language reactions to any of the questions that you may be asking. Masking is very deliberate. Professionals know immediately when someone is masking. I don't know immediately when someone is masking, but just because I'm not always dabbling with I'm not always talking with people who feel the need to mask, right? Like for example, police officers interrogating someone deal with masking all the time. You know, people are aware of how their body language is reacting to the police's questions, so they begin masking their body language, and the police know, okay, there's an intent behind masking the body language, right? But this lady began masking when and she worked in the same field I do. She understands body language probably better than I do. She's worked there a lot longer than I have, so she began masking, and I recognized immediately what was going on. And so rather than ask any more questions, I started looking for answers. And I didn't look for answers from her. I decided to follow her. And I followed her a couple times, and I saw what was going on, and so then I came back with a question to her when I already had the answer, mind you. I wanted to ask her the question. And I don't know why I wanted to ask that question. I think it was just to let her be aware that I was ahead. And I did. I asked her, what's going on with the other guys and stuff, and she just came clean immediately. The second I asked her about it, she didn't even deny it. She began telling me that she was, seeing other guys, that there's a plumber who did free work for her and stuff, and all sorts of fucking nonsense. And it all boiled down to this rush, right? This rush that she liked. And she didn't even try and cry out her way out of it admirably. She just told the truth. And I respected her for it. I respect her to this day because she told the truth, but that's all I respect of her, obviously. I can't show any more respect to her than that, but and that's more than she is deserving of, in my opinion. Some of you may feel differently, but I think that there's no one reason to completely discount somebody. I think that redemption is a viable option for everyone. It's just if we choose to give it to that person or not, right? And yeah, so she wasn't lying about it, but she was omitting the truth. And those omissions of truth are tough to get by because there is no inclination that they are there. Because the person has provided an answer that is so close to the subject that we're getting close to, where they're omitting the truth and not telling us the truth, that we're accepting the answer that they're giving us rather than asking more questions. Really, when we see someone getting defensive, that's a really good time to start asking more questions. And what is defensive? Well, you know what defensive is. Defensive is when, for example, I try and tell my brother something, and he goes, "I know. I know. I know." Or when I ask him something and he goes, "I don't know." I know he's defensive immediately. Defensive is a big deal. Defensive means... defensive essentially means that the person feels like they're under attack. And there's intent there. When someone feels like they're under attack, it's because of the intent that they carry. Right? If your intent is to attack me, and I'm asking you, hey, is your intent to attack me? You're going to get defensive. No, I'm not going to do that. They're getting defensive, right? I'm doing I'm not doing a great job of describing this right now. I apologize, but that defensiveness is another reason we ask those questions that we know the answers to. We want to see if the person gets defensive. We want to hear if the person gets defensive. We want to know the answer that they're going to give. Because the thing is, when we ask a question, we might get an answer, but that answer might not be good enough for us. A lot of the time it's not. A lot of the time when we ask a question, we're very willing to accept any answer given. And in reality, if you're looking for an answer, then look for it. Don't just ask a question, look for the answer. And when I talk to people about that, they often get confused and say, well, what do you mean look for the answer? That's thinking too much. I'm thinking too much. My response is to you thinking that you're thinking too much is, no, you're just thinking. And you can never think too much. I think, anyways. I firmly believe you can never think too much. And the second you think you're thinking too much, you're probably not thinking enough. That's what I think. But I digress. As I was saying, a lot of this a lot of this omitting and a lot of this lying and a lot of this answers that aren't really true that are given through intent. And intent is a big thing. When we have intent, we have not only what the person has done, but potentially what the person is going to do in the future. And that's a huge, huge advantage when you have intent. When I know where you've been and I know where you're probably going, but you don't know shit about me, that's a pretty big advantage. So knowing intent is important. And when someone is omitting the truth, when someone is lying, when someone is giving an answer that is unsatisfactory to our line of questioning, and they are very aware that that answer is unsatisfactory, it becomes a big issue for the person asking the question. The person answering the question isn't doing us a service by answering our question. They're doing themselves a service by answering that question in a certain way. And that's kind of one of the things that I ask a question for, is to see what type of service the person answering it is willing to give me. Is the person willing to answer that question thoroughly? Is the person brushing me off? What type of service is the person who's answering that question giving me? Because when I ask a question of you, I'm really looking for service, right? I'm really looking for an answer. I'm really looking for anything that you can give me. I'm looking for when I ask that question. And so I want to see how willing you are to provide that service, that answer. And if you're not that willing to provide that answer, if you're hanging your socks up on technicalities of the conversation, if you're now, hanging up the truth on a technicality of, well, you didn't ask, if you're omitting the truth like that, there's an intent there. And at that point, that intent becomes undeniably present. When someone's lying to us, we immediately want to know why. And sometimes we don't even want to know why. Sometimes we know why, or we think we know why. And all too often we think we know why. We forget that there's a purpose behind lying sometimes. I lie about my name to protect my family, to protect myself. Yeah. Jason Van Jason is my real fucking name, and if you think it is, you're retarded. It's fucking plain and simple. Sorry, you're not retarded. Well, yeah, you are. Let's not omit the truth. You're totally retarded, okay? But I want to see the type of service that I get from that person. And I want to see what type of service that is, so I know. So I'm comfortable with the answer, yes, but I'm also comfortable asking the questions. Because we know when someone is doing shitty service answering. We know when someone is just brushing us off. We know when someone is just not taking our questions seriously anymore. And some people just don't like answering questions. That's okay. But there's even those people that don't like answering questions. There's an intent behind that. Maybe it's a childhood thing. I don't know. But there's an intent behind everything. There's an intent behind every choice being made. Even if the choice was just, well, I had to make a choice, so I chose this instead of that, all too often, we get frustrated when people make choices because we ourselves have an underlying intent to the choice before the choice is made, right? Underlying intent is when, for example, I have $40 in my bank account. I go put $40 of gas into my vehicle. Then I come back and my girlfriend says, hey, I wanted $10 for the smokes. I wanted $10 to go buy myself a pack of cigarettes. But you spent all of it. I say, well, you didn't tell me that was your intent. She'll say, well, I kind of thought you'd just know. Well, I didn't, so. But that's underlying intent. That's when someone has an intent that they don't really want to share, that they don't really want to broadcast. And maybe buying smokes is a bad example, but there's always an intent of anything, of any choice made. And the reason people hide their intent is because intent is a lot of information. And we have intent. Like I said, we know the choices that person is probably going to make in the future. And furthermore, we know what choices the person has already made to get to this level of intent with whatever intent they have, right? So, chasing down a lie, then, is really not about exposing the liar. People get so wrapped up in exposing the liar. Oh, you're a liar. I exposed you. But as I said, in reality, everyone lies. And if you're going to go around exposing the liar, you're eventually going to get exposed. And so is everyone else on this planet, because everyone lies. And so, and let's not get hung up on technicality. Sure, there's people that don't fucking lie. Okay, there's your technicality service. Shut your fucking mind up now. But yeah, that intent is just we want to find out that intent, and it is such a liberating feeling when I ask a question and someone just gives me their intent. Because not only, someone could give me a reason as to why they wanted that, but that reason is really only a small part of that entire intent, right? A reason isn't intent. Reason comes after intent has been established. Intent is the place where reason comes from. So we can't have reason before intent. We need to have intent. I want this because, and then we give the reason why we want it. We are intending to do that or to have that or whatever. Reason can come before intent too, but it has to become before it in a way of, I suppose in a reasonable way, which doesn't really make much sense. Intent is intending to possess something, and I want to possess this because there's my reason. And a lot of the time we just want to possess something because it's valuable, or because we have personal value attached to it, and so our intent for stealing can become, I wanted this thing, or, I wanted the rush attached to stealing, or, not that anyone will ever admit that, they won't. But, yeah. And so, establishing intent through conversation is, again, very confrontational. If people are on a diet, they don't want to tell us why they're eating, like they want to tell us why they're eating certain foods, but when it comes to being on a diet and all of a sudden cheating on your diet and you're witnessing this person cheat, we don't ask why they're cheating. Well, why are you cheating on your diet? We know the intent of the cheat. We all do. And I can't sit here and put my finger on it, but we all know what it is. We all know why people cheat on their diets. We all know why certain people can't diet. Is that intent, or is that just part of our being? And I would say cheating on the diet is intent. We're intending to feel a certain way after eating food. We're intending our food to taste this good, or that good, or whatever. And establishing intent through conversation, as I was saying, it can become confrontational because ultimately we need to provide a reason as to why we want their intent. We need to produce our intent so that they'll give us their intent. What's your intent with my intent? is really what it comes down to. And so, what's our reason for having their intent? Maybe we're insecure. Maybe we have our suspicions. Maybe there's an assortment of reasons. But if we want to know their intent, we're typically not going to tell them why. And do you see that? Do you see how that feels when you're trying to figure out someone's intent, but you don't want them to know why? We try and be sneaky. We try and hide our intent. That's the game. This right here, this moment of what's your intent with my intent. This is the game right here. And this feels like a new moment right now for you, thinking about this. What's the intent? What's your intent of having my intent? This feels like a new moment. You have existed in this moment your entire life, though. You just don't know it. You're being awakened to the fact right now that you have spent your entire life trying to figure out the intent of everyone around you. And you know what? You haven't. You haven't. And it frustrates you. And for everyone else trying to figure out your intent, we want to know what's their intent of figuring out my intent. And we get into this place where immediately we're faced with a confrontation. Immediately. What's your intent with my intent? That's confrontational. And it's confrontational because we shouldn't have that person's intent. Or if we do have their intent, at the bare minimum, they should really have ours. But sometimes we need to know a person's intent before they ever intend to do whatever they intend to do, right? We want to know if your intent is to, have financial gain when no one is supposed to be financially gaining from whatever situation you're a part of, right? We want to know if someone intends to fuck everyone else over. We want to know if this and that and the third. And the thing is that we're good at hiding intent. And the reason we're good at hiding intent is, I just said it, reason. There are many different reasons to have certain intents. Maybe the reason that I want to know your intent, that I'm intending to know your intent, maybe the reason is because, I'm insecure about the people around me and I need to feel secure about the people around me. Maybe I'm intending to do you harm, and I want to better understand you and what you're going to be doing and where's the best place to catch you and how. I can learn that through intent. Ultimately, we have to understand that intent is something that we all deal with. Intent is something we all have. And intent is something we're all trying to hide. Even if your intent is to bang the donut lady, or to fuck the librarian, or to... I can't think on the top of my fucking head. Maybe your intent is to make a lot of money. Maybe your intent is to drive a nice car. Maybe your intent is to do this and that. We like to keep our intents to ourselves. And especially if you have an intimate partner, know that that person has intent too. And they probably don't want to share it with you. And you probably don't want to share your ultimate intent with them. Or if you do want to share your ultimate intents, good for you guys. That's fantastic. There has to be an element of trust when we have someone's intent and they don't have ours. And the thing about having somebody else's intent is that that person can automatically assume that our intent is to do them harm. And to be honest, if we want to have that intent and we want to make ours not known, that's probably the reason why, is because we want to do them some kind of harm. Maybe it's a police officer knowing the intent of a serial killer so he can, establish a motive or an intent to put that person away, to do that individual harm so that they can't do harm to others, right? Or to help that individual, if you want to look at it that way, or to help them. But, intent is super hard to establish. And we want to establish that intent through questions. And not just through questions, but through questioning the answers given. By not settling for just whatever they answer the question with. Or having the intelligence to settle for the answer that they give us. There's certain things that we need to have intent on, though. For example, if I'm marrying some young woman and I want to know if she wants to take all my money or not, I probably want to know her intent, don't I? And I don't know. Establishing that intent is often something that takes years, not just weeks or months. It can take years to establish intent. It can take years to analyze people's actions and watch what they're doing and try and figure out why they're doing it. Try and kind of reverse engineer the reason to get to the intent, so to speak. Which is perfectly doable, but ultimately once we figure out that person's ultimate intent, we don't want to believe it. We don't want to believe that someone could ultimately intend something so base as to, why this person didn't hire me. Well, maybe she didn't like your hair. And that's why she didn't hire you. And she had no other reason not to hire you other than she didn't like your hair. But she gave a million other reasons that weren't anything to do with your hair at all. But at the end of the day, it was the hair. There's so many places for this conversation to go. And even when we get to answers to the questions, as I said, the answers are not the end. We can question the answers, and we certainly should. And understand, to bring this all back around, understand that people have every right to ask why you're asking a question. To tie this all around, when I ask a question, I ultimately need a reason as to why I'm asking that question. So, when I'm trying to establish intent through asking questions, I have to understand that I'm making my intent potentially known in the process. So as you can see, this becomes like a war. A verbal war of sorts. At all times, we're trying to figure out each other's intent. At all times. That doesn't end. We're always doing that. Even when the intent is of no consequence to us at all. When we know where that person has been and where that person is potentially going, that's information that we want about any human being. any human being at all, intent is important. Intent gives us basically a blueprint to the choices the person's going to make, if that's the correct intent. As I said, we understand where that person has been and where they're going. That's powerful information. That's like some crystal ball shit. That's like some read the future type shit. Like, intent's huge. And be aware that at all times there's people trying to establish your intent. And a lot of the time when we're doing things, we're not even aware of our own intent. And that's kind of the ultimate question. Why aren't we aware of our own intent? And I don't have an answer to that. I don't have an answer to why we're not questioning our own intent and what that could potentially look like. And it's it's our own intent needs to be established for ourselves, but also for the people around us. And this is, I've been rambling on, and this is the point that I'm coming to, is that you need to have people in your life that you can trust to know your intent. That's the ultimate friend. Someone who knows your intent can even stay ahead of you. And all too often, we're scared of letting our friends ahead of us. We're scared of saying, this is where I ultimately want to be. Can you help me get there? We're scared to ask that. We're scared to let people know our intentions. And rightly so. As I said, intention is a lot of information. But you know what? If you're surrounding yourself with somebody or anybody that you can't share your intentions with, I would really implore you to question why that person is there. When you can't share your intention with that person, you really need to question why that person's presence is there. Why that person is present. And when you begin questioning, the first thing that you're going to find, whether it be your own or theirs, is intent. That's the very first thing. That's ultimately intent is where every question comes from, right? Intent is of the question. Without intent, there is no question. And there is no answer. Certainly, if there's no question, there's no answer. And so, anytime there's a question being asked, we have to look at the intent behind the question. Even when we're asking ourselves. You know, if I ask myself what my intent is, I'm asking because I, A, probably don't know, and B, I want to know. You know, it could be that simple, but either way, we have to understand that questions come from intent. And if I can't share my intent with you, do I really want to share anything with you? If I cannot share my intent with you, there's a reason why. And we need to explore that reason. Because when we explore that reason and we backpedal on that reason, we're going to find intent. And the thing is, a lot of us don't want to find intent. A lot of us are just happy with that person's presence. And we never question their questions. We never question their answers. We just accept everything that we're told. And you can't be accepting like that. So, there is the wisdom. Number 9, the wisdom. Alright? Every question has an intent behind it, and without intent, there is no question. Without intent, there is no answer because there is no question. And to an extent, there can be an answer with no question, but there definitely can't be intent without an answer. Intent always has to have an answer. Intent always has to have a question. Intent always has to have a reason. I hope I'm not confusing you guys. Holy fuck, we're at an hour. Yeah, I hope I'm not, confusing you guys super bad or anything. I'm just, I just want you to know that if you can't share your intent with the individuals around you, you need to get new individuals around you who you can share your intent with. And if ultimately you cannot share your intent with the people around you, then as I said, A, don't, but B, just remove those people. Seriously, if you can't share intent, what can you share? I don't know. When you don't feel comfortable asking questions, when you don't feel comfortable giving answers, when you feel the need to question somebody's answers again and again, it just really brings up the question, why is that person even there? It brings up a question of intent. And that's the last thing the person wants to answer, is a question of intent. But god damn it, they're going to answer it. Anyways. Intent. It's important. Figure it out. That's why I was talking to you about body language the other day. I want you to understand that intent is important. With intent, you have information at your fingertips like fucking Google, for fuck's sakes. It's like having somebody's intent is like having Google for their fucking brain. That's kind of a funny way to put it, but it's true. Intent is huge. My name is Jason Van Jason. You can find me on Twitter at Jason Van Jason. You can go to Amazon Author Central page. There's a link in the description below. You can go there and purchase some products for 99 cents. Or you can click on a blog, get to my link through that link of, it's this little window on my page there. You'll see these little windows that are all my separate blog entries. You can click on those and get to those there. If you have any questions for the show, jvjradio at protonmail.com. The email is in the description below as well. Again, follow me on Twitter. Do whatever the fuck it is you do. Find me on Facebook. I don't know if you can. You probably can't. But if you could, that'd be hilarious. I'll have to get my actual Facebook name up. You know what, though? I'm not even going to talk about it because I don't even care enough to get to have it on me right now. So I'm sure you don't care enough to listen. Anyways, my name is Jason Van Jason. This has been number 9 of Bitch Faggot Radio. I hope you have learned something today. Anything at all. I hope you have a little better intent management in your life. Understand that intent management is not about just the intent of you, but the intent of all the people around you. And understand that the people around you have intent, and if they did not, they would not be around you. Love you all. May the devil touch you. May God fuck with you. And may the two provide a balance in your life that is going to bring you to places that you never even imagined, or you did imagine, but you just didn't think you'd go. Well, guess what, bitch? You find that talent. You find that balance, and you find that will, that talent, balance, and will, and you just a little bit of luck, you're going to get to where you want to go. So fucking get going. My name is Jason Van Jason. Goodbye.